Hey, thank you so much for joining another episode of Celeste the Therapist podcast. My name is Celeste. I'm a therapist from Boston. If you have not, if you listen to me and you have not subscribed on YouTube, I need you to subscribe. And you can also check out these podcasts on YouTube. Just search Celeste the Therapist. And today I'm going to have him introduce himself to you all.
Hi, I'm Jermaine Morris, and yeah, nice to be here.
No, you got to tell people who you are because I always have new listeners.
Okay, I'm Jermaine Morris. I'm a certified coach and consultant with a practice based around the DISC assessment. It's where we look at your behavioral traits and how you deal with problems, interact with people, work at pace and procedure. We use the assessment to gauge particular issues or challenges somebody's going through, and so we structure an individual like coaching plan for that person based upon who they are individually, and then help put steps into place to help them deal with the challenges that they're facing.
Nice. And why did you get into this work? Just out of curiosity.
I think that it's just been a process, and I think that a lot of things that I think that my life is patterned almost the way that I speak. So it seems like a bunch of maybe things that may not seem like they tie together, and then at the end it comes together to make a point. I was doing a bunch of different things in life that seemed like they were completely different paths, but ultimately ended up tying together. So by being in broadcasting for a while, and even like tutoring, counseling, teaching type stuff, and a whole bunch of things. And I got introduced to the assessment specifically through an individual, and they was just telling me so much about how it benefited his life. Like it's
Mhm.
like, man, this is great. And the person who had introduced it to him used it more corporate structure.
Mhm.
And he's just like, no, but when you apply it to life, it can really help. And this guy was like, man, it helped my marriage, helped my finances, my business, everything. And I was just like, okay, man, it's a test. Like, how's this
Mhm.
test just changed everything? And then I spoke to somebody else who went through the same assessment and program. It's like, no, man, it changed everything, my whole life. And I kept talking to more and more people in this community. And I used to joke, I said, y'all starting to sound like a cult. Like the way that they were promoting and talking about this test. I was like, dude, it's a test. And so I went and I eventually took it myself. And I just
Yeah.
received so much clarity about so many things in my life. And then I started
Yeah.
sounding like them. And I saw so many benefits because my whole base for everything is self-awareness without judgment. I got to a really clear look and example at the way that I was maneuvering in the world, the way that I was interfacing with life. And with that information, it connected the dots, dealing with relationships, with how I deal with money, professionally, all these
Mhm.
sorts of things. And I got so many benefits from it that I decided that I wanted to go and get certified and learn more about it to where I could help other people so they can get that same clarity that I got.
That's amazing. I laugh because when I talk about it, I feel like I sound like a cult too. And I'll tell my clients about it to some like, yo, I promise you got to take this. So it's so funny because that's why I feel like I sound. It's like I know it sounds weird, but you just got to do it to understand what I'm talking about.
Yeah, because there's no point of like, there's nothing I could ever compare it to. So the same way when somebody was trying to explain, it was like, man, it's a test. It'll take you about 10, 15 minutes, but it's going to explain you all to get, I'm like, man, it's a test. And I was already grown. I was almost 40 when I had taken this. So I was like, nah, I know me pretty well. I know me. I know me. Oh, I was sadly mistaken. And so those things about us that we know ourselves, but there's gaps. And this information helps fill in those gaps, and then it helps connect dots. And so you start seeing patterns of behavior, and then it starts seeing things. Then the best way I kind of can see it for myself is that it slowed the world down. That things that seem to come at me faster because maybe I didn't understand or I didn't see what I was doing, because it highlights blind spots in our behavior. It highlights issues in communication that we may have and environments. There's things that I wasn't seeing. I had stuff that was in my blind spots. It's much like if you're driving, if you don't see a car in your blind spot and you go to merge, it came out of nowhere, even though the car could have been with you for 2 miles, like in that blind spot. So when this highlights and shows you where those blind spots are, it just things slowed down. Less things were coming at me quickly, and I got a better understanding of things. And that's one of the major things I try to help other people see.
That's dope. That's dope. And I want to talk about that, these things that people aren't aware of. I like the analogy with the car and it's been there, but you didn't know it was there
Yeah.
because it's in your blind spot. But I wanted to show people this cup. So
Oh,
Kelly follows me on social media, listens to the podcast, and she created this. I want to show you guys for people that are listening on audio. I wanted to show you this. Me and my family went to a protest last year, and somebody tagged me in this picture, and then so she seen this picture and she created this amazing cup for me. So thank you, Kelly. I just want to shout her out for this because it was a
very
complete
cool. Very
surprise.
cool.
So speaking of gifts, holidays are coming up, and I know that one of the things that people struggle with around the holiday time is family
Yeah.
and expectation, right? I think sometimes we perform, and this isn't just holidays, right? We've talked about expectations before, but I think specifically holidays because not just our culture, family has expectations, but society creates this expectation. When you look at the movies, the commercials, so I think a lot of times when people's lives aren't matching up to what they're seeing, they may struggle with not doing it a certain way, regardless of how it's going to make them feel.
Yeah.
Um, I would love for you to like kind of kick off the conversation to share like with like your thoughts on that and how people tend to like struggle around this time.
Yeah, so holidays are, as much as we call it festive, it was the most wonderful time of the year. It's very difficult for a lot of people. And there are the percentage of people because maybe they don't have the close familial ties they like, or maybe they're not uh, partnered or with children, so they don't have that dynamic around holidays. There's that group over there, and those situations that they go through is very real. But the groups that I have a tendency to come in contact with are the ones who actually have people, and that's actually the root of their issues. So it's showing up to family functions. It's interacting with people that they have challenges with, because you walk that line of self-care and self-preservation versus the feelings of expectation, requirements, and judgment. you know you- you're expected to be at grandma's this year, but you may not want to be there. You and your family, you may not want to smile for the pictures with the family that you haven't been cool with for 11 months, but all of a sudden they want you to take the Christmas card photos together. That these are the people who are going to judge your life choices, where you chose to go to school, or if you chose to go to school, who you're with, who you bring, who would have to come with you if you go. Maybe the job you took or the job you didn't take, like the things that you're going to feel with the most scrutiny, typically comes from the people closest to you, and the people closest to you are usually the highest percentage around the holidays.
Mm-hmm,
So, instead of American Idol standing in front of 3 judges like we do in life, you got 33 who are just waiting to give you the thumbs up or the thumbs down on your life moves.
It's so true. And one of the things you said earlier about like I want to go back to the car analogy, the car
Okay.
that's been there but not really paying attention to it. When I'm talking to people, and this is a real, I have like kind of similar conversations throughout this year with different people from different backgrounds.
Yeah.
One of the things I point out is like, but isn't that how they are? Like I would tell people like, but that's how you, that sounds exactly like you describe your mom. Why do you think people continue to get caught off guard when these times comes? Meaning like they struggle. No, like this happens every single year,
Yeah.
and you choose to go regardless of what it looks like. It's a choice. Like no
Yeah.
one's making us go. Why do you think people are struggling with behavior that is always there, kind of like the car that's been in your background but you didn't know it was there until it turned?
So the kind of difference I would put on that analogy is that's the instead of the car, that's because you're aware of what the situation is. It's almost like a negotiation at distance, almost trying to parallel park, and it's real tight. Now your car is too big for this space, but you think you can wedge it in there if you just angle it right. Like, between your sister coming home from college and your mama about to criticize your dude, this is a real narrow window that you can get in and get out without being scrutinized and criticized. But there's really no way there's so many things have to be in alignment for this to happen. And so there's some people who err on the side of, if I can just get in, if I just don't address anything specific, if I just deflect enough, I just say my hellos, maybe take a couple pictures, half a plate and bounce, like I can get in and get out unscathed. So there's a percentage who knows what the danger is. They know the cars in the river. They're just trying to negotiate if they can get in front of it before they try to merge. For the groups that you're kind of talking about, like step on the same landmine every year. I think that for that it's not that sometimes we change and evolve and we develop and we're different and we just kind of hope somebody else did also. So if we're like, I'm not the same person I was when I lived at home, it's been 5 years, 6 years, 16 years, whatever it is, since these certain things have happened, you might just be hoping that somebody else is different too. So you're like, I'm going to give them a chance. Like, this is my mom. This is my dad. This is my brother, my sister. This is grandma. This is, aunt, uncle. Like, I'm going to bite the bullet and roll the dice. And then you go through that stage of, you knew yesterday what this was going to look like. You show up on the drive, you know what it's going to look like. You sit through it the whole time telling yourself, I knew this was going to happen. And then you drive home resenting yourself for stepping on a landmine that you knew was there yesterday. And so for a lot of people, that's a struggle because it's a hard line to walk. Where's the separation between self-preservation and then, turning your back on your family?
Yeah. Yeah. And unfortunately, turning your back on your family has a negative connotation for some people, even if you're trying to like preserve your peace. And one other caveat, I think, to that, like going to someone's space, knowing what you're going to get, is it's a familiar space to be in, right? So choosing chaos over peace sometimes is very comfortable. Choosing peace over chaos, like choosing not to go, actually can feel a lot harder to do because it's something that you haven't exercised. It's a space that your system is not used to doing, right? And I see this a lot when people are developing and evolving, that they find themselves not having any kind of like drama or chaos, and then creating it and then when I point it out, they're like, oh my gosh, you're right. Like, so people don't even, like, you would never think, like, I honestly would never have fathomed that would be the case where you can like create chaos because you don't have it in your life. Does that make sense what I'm saying?
Very much so. You'll find people in relationships who are so used to a chaotic dynamic, that they'll pick a fight with somebody who's not fighting with them.
Mm-hmm.
Like, oh, he's too quiet. I need to start poking at him. like get riled up, get angry about something. I just need to argue. I just need to know, like, I need that energy. There's people who do that. Self-sabotage is very real.
Mm-hmm.
And and I think in regards to with like family that way. Yeah, I remember too, though, if you're used to being criticized in a very critical environment and it still affects you, you still care about what these people think. So the idea of not going doesn't sit well with you because you still care. You still care that they're going to talk about you. You still care that they're going to criticize you not coming. You're still going to care that they're going to try to guilt you into showing up. So when you've turned that corner, you're like, y'all can say whatever you want to say from across town. Like, I'm going to live my best life on Thursday. I'm going to spend Christmas however I choose. But when you're still attached to that you're still married to that criticism. Y'all may not even live in the same house anymore. You may be saying, but you're still married, you're still connected. Like, all it takes is a phone call from somebody, and it brings you back to when you lived at home. It brings you back to when they were 12, kept telling you, riding you because you couldn't play the piano right, or 13, and you just riding you about the grades you were getting, or how you were dressed, or what you decided to do with your hair, or who you're like. That criticism becomes brand new again, and then you find yourself just like you used to, kind of caving to the person who's kind of your critical overseer. And so even though you know it doesn't feel good, you kind of revert back, and then you find yourself back in that same space. That makes
Yeah,
sense?
that's it makes a lot of sense. And also I think, just for people who may, you know, I think having context as to why, I think a lot of times why, especially in the Black families and Black community, will say like, family is everything, family over, like we got to stick together.
Yeah.
Back during slavery times, that's what we had to do. We had to stick together. We had to come together to like get over a lot of like stumbling blocks and obstacles. And so I think sometimes that same mentality we have kept as our mindset,
Right.
and unfortunately it hurts us, right? Like some people are held back. We've talked about like the friendship dynamic a lot, but sometimes the family dynamic will hold us back. And there's a way to hold two truths for people, I think, that we don't like speak about enough. Is like, I can love my mom, I can love like my siblings, but I can also not like how they are,
Yes.
and I can work on protecting myself from it. I think sometimes it's like, well, if I love you, that means I'm supposed to be here and I'm supposed to like do this thing for you because I love you.
Right.
But you can love somebody and distance yourself because you're really trying to protect your peace. Because when you leave that event, you're the one who has to deal with the residue of whatever happened that happens every year. Does that
Yeah.
part make sense?
Very much so. And I think that I think it's the word love that where we get shook. Love is not the same as like. Love is not the same as you can love somebody, and they say your family. You're supposed to love your family unconditionally. We use that phrase a lot, unconditional love. Um, okay, I can love you, period, at the end of the sentence. Now, do I want to interact with you and spend my time with you? That's a completely different conversation. I love you, period. But am I willing to sacrifice my mental well being, my mental health, my mental fitness to be okay for the things that I have to do in this world just to be in your company? Different conversation. So there are people that we can sit there and love. I appreciate you. I want all the best for you. I value your existence on this earth. The impact you've made on my life has made me, give or take, good or bad, the person that I am today. However, I have learned that being in your presence is not healthy for me. Maybe that some of the things that you do leave me in a space that I do not want to be in. And this is not a question of if I love you or not. This may be, let's keep it a buck, I may not like you. So I can love you as the familiar relationship that we have. But if we weren't related, we wouldn't be cool. So it's like some of the ways that our family operates are not healthy for us because some of them are not aware of the things that they do. Some of them are not aware of the ripples and the tides that they cause, the wakes that they cause based on some of the moves that they make. And so you are hurting me, maybe unknowingly. And because you're doing that, I can't stand in front of this train. Now, when I see the train in the distance, hey, that's a great, hey man, love that train, whatever. But I'm not about to stand in front of it. So I think that we when we put love, that means because you love your mother, you love your grandmother, you love your father, you love your brother, your sister. That means that you have to subject yourself to a painful experience because you love them, and that's not true.
Mm-mm, it's not true. And one of the things that people tend to struggle with is this idea of feeling selfish by choosing them.
Yeah.
What I would love to hear your thoughts on that, because this is something common as I'm, working with people and trying to get them to choose themselves. And the beauty in choosing myself is that I actually have more to give,
Yes.
because I'm not running on E. But when people are struggling with that idea of choosing themselves as being selfish, what would you say to them?
So if I start, so if someone says that choosing me, I feel like if I don't go, I'm being selfish, or I feel like the best thing for me is just to be over here and do this and that, because a lot of people have the title, they attach love to sacrifice. So because I love you, then I need to be willing to sacrifice my health, my peace, my what's going on with me for the greater good of them or for us. But I also look at, so for somebody who feels that way, to me, that's the equivalent of you got a quarter of a tank of gas left in the car and somebody's asking you for a ride that's going to require half a tank of gas. You, yeah, I don't want to leave them on the corner, but I couldn't even get you there anyway. Or if I did, I could get you to where you're going, but I'm gonna be stuck on the side of the road. Like, this is not a question of me not liking you. This just does not make sense. Like, the state that I'm gonna be in, the anxiety I'm gonna feel, the depression I'm gonna feel, the what usually happens, the projection that happens to the other people in the world that you created for yourself that has peace, you will leave your peaceful space to go into this chaotic one. And when you come back from the chaotic one, you're going to bring chaos to the peace that you left. So you being upset with your mom is going to mean you're going to start fighting with your girl. Like, you being upset with seeing your dad from across the table means, you and your dude might get into it. Like, the space that you were in seeing your sister means now you might start yelling at your kids. Like, sitting there saying that it's not being selfish to say that I have especially if you've created a peaceful space for yourself. This is where you actually have to reinforce it by, kind of how they say how a ship sinks. The ship doesn't sink from the water on the outside. Ship sinks from the water on the inside. You're letting water into your boat if you know you're going to put yourself in a situation that goes against your mental health and your well-being. So it's not being selfish, it's being safe. It's not being selfish, it's being smart. It's not being, it's not being selfish. It's saying that I love me enough not to drill holes in my own boat.
I like
that,
that.
that makes sense, Yeah.
Loving yourself requires discipline.
Very much
And
so.
discipline doesn't always feel good to do. A lot of the discipline I do with myself, it's not always because I feel like doing it or want to do it, but it's because like I know where I'm heading. And one of the things Jermaine said about love doesn't equal like sacrifice. For people that may be struggling with this idea of love, know that a lot of ways in which you are looking at love is not just from what you've seen on TV, but what you've seen in your own home. I think like my kids are gonna know the importance of taking care of themselves and being mindful of what they need because of the way they are seeing me. That's not something I've seen. That's not something I'm sure my mom's mom has seen. And a lot of us have grown up in environments where we have not seen our caregivers or people who have taken care of us take care of themselves first, especially if Black women, right? So it's an important thing to understand when you're like struggling with this idea of love and sacrifice, and I'm supposed to do this and do that. A lot of that probably comes from what you've seen. So like really take inventory of that as you are grappling with trying to create peace and choose you and release some of the guilt you may feel from choosing you because you want that peace of mind. Make sense?
Very much so. And the thing about when you start saying I'm going to start doing things that's better for me, so I always like to look at stuff personally. So I've got certain relatives who've gone off the reservation, and they're just like, I'm not coming to this. Like I that's just not nah, son. And so they go and do their own thing. And then the other ones on the reservation see how happy they've become. And they're like, oh, so and so ain't been around for a while. Yeah, but do you see how she's living? And then they start leaving the reservation. And what happens is some of the dynamic of the reservation changes because these people start realizing, no, I'm going to choose being okay. And then people start realizing, what are all these people leaving? Like, what are they, why are you guys not coming around? Because of A, B, C, D, and E. And this where it goes sometimes blind spots. Because especially because our dynamic, you have to remember, for some people, they forget that we're talking generationally. So if your dynamic is raised by, if right now we're in 2021 and you're trying to deal with stuff, you're dealing with people who were raised in the 60s and 70s, who were people who could have been raised in the 40s and 50s with values they received from people who were born in the 10s and 20s. So some of the things that they're like the environments that you're in, they're a lot of antiquated philosophies and ways of doing things. They're just like, this don't fit. And so they may not think anything's wrong with the way they're doing things. If your mom is 70, the stuff that she came up under was raised by a woman who, if she's still alive, would be 90, 95, 100. Those are the principles that they're trying to instill when you come around to the family function. That just may not work. So sometimes when people start choosing themselves, the older generation start realizing, oh, less of the kids are coming around, less of the like what is okay, maybe I need to start rethinking some of these things, because obviously something's not working if these people are not like they're opting out. So so sometimes some change does happen, uh because these people are not holding on to these critical thinking. They're not holding on to being judgmental because they're mean or rude. It's just the way they've done something. And if
Mhm.
they never get challenged on the way they've done it, there's no reason to change. So sometimes in choosing yourself, that actually holds what they're doing to the light. And some people actually make those changes because they value their kids visiting more than they value criticizing when they show up.
Absolutely. And being the first person in your dynamic to create that choice is hard. Like
Yeah.
it's not like it's I say like if you're building a road from scratch, it takes a lot longer than filling a hole.
Yeah.
And you're literally like starting from scratch. So it can feel hard. But like Jermaine said, I've like talked to people and witnessed with my own like eyes and heard about how the relationship looks different, and it wasn't like an immediate reaction to the
Yeah.
change. It wasn't like, okay, I'm not going to do this time, so they're going to stop asking me.
Yeah.
But what happens is like you maintain consistency because you become disciplined with yourself. The other person has no other choice but to like go with the way that you're creating the relationship, or they
Yeah.
can choose to step out of the relationship. So that's a really great point, and a positive effect that can happen
Yeah.
when someone decides to choose themselves.
And I think honesty, when we're honest with ourselves about this environment is not healthy for me. I can say personally, I remember maybe 10, 15 years ago, I had to have an honest conversation with my mother. We are now at this point, we are both grown adults. So we need to have a conversation on the way that we're going to communicate and how things are going to go. And there are some things that were brand new information for her, like my way of seeing things or my perception of stuff. Oh, I didn't even know. Like, I didn't even know you felt that way, And so sometimes we have an image in our head. We think of our parents as a title as opposed to being people. And so when you think of, no, that's mom. No, that's Janet. That's Michelle. That's Shirley. That's Deborah. Like, she's a grown woman existing in this world. No, that's dad. Dad is this and he's that. No, that's Jim. Who's made a whole bunch of adjustments in his life at different jobs and different lives, different things he was in. Like, the ability to process information. We think of our parents as these statues who are marble, set in stone, set in their ways, this and that. And we forget that these are people who are 20, 30 years older than us. So the same way we thought of our parents as they're this statue, we are already past the age they were when they raised us. In the same way that we're open to new ideas and still open to trying different things and changing stuff, like, so are they. They're human beings. So sometimes the conversation actually can go a lot better than you think it will. If you look, you gonna come around. Actually, I don't want to, and here's why. Here are the things that happen when I show up. Here are the things that go on. Oh, I didn't even, oh, my bad. Like, and then sometimes that conversation can come where you can change that dynamic, but a lot of us get too afraid to speak up in the first place because that's mom or that's grandma or that's dad or that's grandpa. But when we remember that they're people, that they're human beings, that it doesn't work for everybody, but there's some people, a lot more people will be surprised of how many people actually open to hearing them if they actually just be honest about what's going on with them.
Yes. And in order to be honest with what's going on with us, earlier you said that when you have a quarter of tanking your gas and someone's asking you for a ride, that all the gas stations are closed and they are further away. So when you drop them off, you won't have enough gas to get back. I think about people who their gauge is broken, like they don't know. that they only have a quarter of gas left in their tank. So you may not know like that, if you do this thing for so and so, when you get home, you're not going to have enough space for your kids or for your spouse or for yourself. How much to self-awareness, because we're talking about like having this conversation with somebody and saying no and choosing us, but how much does being self-aware of what you need play a role in being able to do that work?
It's everything.
Yeah.
Because you can't relay to somebody else what you need if you don't know what you need. You can't even articulate what the problem is if you don't know what the problem is.
And that's a huge issue, is that some people really don't know how to articulate.
Yeah. So, like I said, starting with the conversation with yourself. I don't want to go, Thanksgiving's coming up, followed by Christmas. It's that, hopscotch. And just be like, I don't want to go. Why? Why in this conversation with yourself? And why don't I want to go? Well, because every time I go, they want to get on me about I dropped out of college. They want to get on me about this, this, and this. Okay, so what's the issue? I don't want to be judged and criticized just to have dinner with these people. Okay, so you know what the problem is. You know what I mean? Like this is the issue. Now you may not know why it triggers you so much and why it bothers you so much. That may be deeper levels to really get into, but you know the face value issue. I want to be able to sit across from you without feeling judged for 2 hours. Okay, that's a conversation you can have with somebody. Look, I want to come, but I want to come and spend time with y'all and have a good time. This is not about this is not a job review. I'm not here for y'all to have a tribunal and critique my life and give me the thumbs up or thumbs down on my choices. If you want to come and spend time with me, I would love to come and spend time with you. But if it's going to be anything other than that, I'm just going to stay at the pad. Like you can have that conversation first. And then if they don't respect the boundaries that you put to begin with, where you won't be next year.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Just being very clear with yourself is going to be a huge game changer. But like Jermaine said, self-awareness is going to play a huge role in that game changer space that's going to happen.
Yeah. And
go ahead.
Okay. Oh, if you can't identify what the problem is, because for some people, they don't know that that's the issue, that they don't realize that it's because they just know when they get around people, there's a certain energy. Starting with yourself of the self inventory of, okay, who is it? Is it your family or is it your sister? Do you know what I'm saying? Is it your family or is it your father? Like start with where do you feel this at? I know I can hang out with my sister all the time and it's nothing. But when I get around my mom, no. Or I can hang out with my mom or my sister, but I can't hang out with my mom and my sister. Like start looking at, try to figure out for yourself to start becoming aware of where are the soft spots. What are the things that start to, because some of us were like, I can hang out with all my family individually, but when I get together, they gang up on me. Like sometimes it's dynamics like that. So start figuring out what it is to the best of your ability, what it is that's bothering you, who it is that's bothering you, and why do you think it's bothering you? What is the button that it's pushing? Because sometimes what happens is that, and this is another group of people. The reason why we get upset is not because the people that we're around, and this is such a popular word all the time, people say that everybody's toxic. What they're doing is shedding light on something that we already think of ourselves. So we know that we're not happy with the life decisions we make. And when we get in front of these people, they're going to ask us about the stuff that we don't necessarily like that we've done. We know we picked the wrong mate. But as soon as we get in front of grandma, she's going to start asking us about our girlfriend. We know we shouldn't have dropped out and picked this job. But as soon as we get in front of dad, he's going to start asking, how's that job going? So it's not that the people that were around are the problem. It's that we have not reconciled with the life choices that we've made. And if we know we get around these people, they're going to highlight those things that we're not trying to deal with. If that's the issue, at least be honest with that. Don't pick fights with your sister because you don't want to be around because she's going to ask you about your husband. Like, just be honest that maybe you and your husband need to work on some stuff before you get around family. Like sometimes the self-awareness is what is actually happening with me.
Yeah, I like that, and that's a important point to make. Because some of the choices that we have made or are making, we may not be completely happy with it,
Yeah,
but if we're aware of what we're doing, because it's not about this segment, we don't want to tell people how to live or how to do things,
exactly.
but just understand what you're doing. And believe it or not, when you actually become clear with your choices, especially if it's a choice you find yourself feeling like, why do I keep doing this? Or why does you're finding it to feel impulsive when it's, we're making these choices automatically. But when you actually become more grounded and clear on what you're doing, it'll start not feeling the same anymore. It won't
Yeah.
feel as it was before, because now you're in it. You're not like around it. You're not like thinking ahead. You're really in those choices. And so when you become clear, and I'm at this event with Jermaine, and Jermaine mentioned something to me, it won't hurt me the same way because I already know what I'm doing. I'm clear about it. That's the beauty of being clear. And I know people don't like to face what's happening in front of them because sometimes it can feel really hard, but being able to face what's in front of you and to feel what's happening is that you actually have more control. You don't feel like everything outside of you is harming you, right?
Yeah.
Like you are the person that's in the driver's seat, and that's the difference, I think.
Yeah, I think that that's big. So if we're honest with who we are, whatever that looks like this is not even a judgment on good or bad, right? Like whatever it is that you want to do with your life, if you are okay with it, then be okay with it. But I think what happens, like I said, when we get questioned on things and challenged on things, we're getting challenged on something we're not okay with. And so that's why it hurts. It's not because of the person who's necessarily asking, it's because we're not living a genuine life. We're not being true to ourselves in what we're doing. And that's the problem. So if so kind of tying all that stuff together, it's like when so people start getting upset, all these different things that cause these anxieties and these issues and these problems, starting with yourself, the self inventory, the things that am I okay with the life that I'm living? And if the things that I'm not, can I am I working on them? And like getting okay with us. And that seems kind of vague, and it seems kind of like, of course, you should be okay with yourself. But reality is like, let me just maybe I'm not in the job. I'm not making the money I want to make. Maybe my relationships are horrible. Maybe, my money's not only funny, it's doing stand up. Like nothing is really panning out like I thought, but I'm working on those things. So somebody bringing those things up to me, okay, yeah, I know, but I'm doing this and this, and I'm okay because I've come to grips with that. But it's like I said, just being okay with us.
And my regulars from the show, I've told this story a million times, but I'm gonna say it again because it ties into what you're saying. Well, when I was like in a lot of debt and the bill collectors was calling me, I was ignoring them, but I was always anxious when the mail came, and when they called, I would get anxious. And then I decided to like face my current what was in front of me, and I called them to create a payment plan. And I called them to create a payment plan, and eventually the anxiety was releasing. My credit score didn't change. I was still in the same amount of debt, but I had a plan and I was clear on what was happening. And so that's literally ties into what Jermaine is saying around like whatever it is that you're doing, and if you're not happy with where you are in life, making a decision to work on it, it's not going to put you where you are in life. It's like, well, what's the point? I'm not, it's going to take me a long time to get there. It took me a long time to climb out of debt. But when I had a plan, I promise you that anxiety was not the same. The emotions around it was not the same.
Yeah. Okay. So taking that, I think we too many of us had these similar stories when it comes to debt, especially being in our 20s.
Mhm.
So I had this very similar experience, and then I guess maybe I'm gonna say take it a step further, but I shifted from being anxious, nervous, avoiding bill collectors, all that, to accepting my situation, to then going on the offense. So I went from avoiding bill collectors, avoiding phone calls, all that, to I made a decision to get stuff better. So then I started contacting them. Like I learned how credit works, and I learned about how collection agencies work. Okay, you probably bought my debt for 30% of what it is that I owed. So you just need to get your money back in a little bit for your time. So I started calling them like, hey, yeah, this is Jermaine Morris. I know y'all been looking for me for a while. I owe you $200. You sent me a letter. I'll give you 50 and we can close that. No, sorry, sir, I can't do that. I need at least you owe 200, whatever. Look at here, man. Y'all been looking for me for a while. You got me on the phone right now. If I hang up this phone, you don't take my $50. I'm gonna call the next person in line, and someone's gonna take my $50 today. I think I can't do that. Well, let's put supervisor on the phone. So can you do 60 and we'll close it out? 60 done. Hang up. One debt crossed off. Go to the next one. Like I went from trying to dodge these people and run from these people to then accepted like I'm never gonna get out of this hole with this behavior and this mentality too. I just went straight on the offense. Like I'm gonna attack all these problems that I've been running from and dealing with all these things. And I got all that stuff cleared up. Still took me a while. Credit was garbage for quite some time, but it's a different mentality when Bill Clear, like it just changes your whole mindset. I was still in debt. I still had a crappy credit score. I still had a list of people I owed money to, but I felt completely different about myself. So then I felt differently about them. These were not people that had control over me. These were people who were going to do, in my mind, what I said and
Mm-hmm.
make this situation better. But all that came from me realizing that I wasn't happy with what I was doing. I accepted that what I was doing wasn't working for me, and then I put something in place to offset that problem and address that challenge.
Yeah, that's good. That's good. And it required discipline. It required you moving money around, changing
Yeah,
up the way you were spending money, that all that discipline. And I think that's what is hard for people is the discipline piece. And nothing, I think if it all felt good creating this change, then everybody would be changing. But
yeah,
it doesn't feel good at all, right? So I think it's really important to like keep in front of you why you're doing this or what's your why. So
yes,
if you are becoming self-aware, understanding that you don't like feeling how you feel, or you don't like being where you are, or you don't like where you currently are in life, that's your why, right? Like
yeah,
you want to get out of that space and get into a new space.
yeah. And like I said, self preservation is not selfishness. It's not turning your back on folks. It's saying I may need to pass on Thanksgiving and Christmas so I can hang out with y'all next summer.
Mm-hmm.
Like I need to take some time to shore up my boat and get myself reinforced and be okay with me. So
Mm-hmm.
moving forward, I'm in a better position to really look at and deal with things and adjust and adapt to stuff that happens.
Yeah.
You know, go ahead.
And it's one day. And don't forget my listeners in America, our country is very much about capitalism. So this day, there's so much pressure put on one day, but if you want to see certain people, there are 364 other days out the year that you can do that. In fact, it may be cheaper to do that. Um, so kind of keep that in mind, especially for my people that are struggling with loneliness, around the holidays. So many reasons why you may find yourself lonely. Maybe you're not with a partner. Maybe you don't have kids. Maybe you've lost someone. I really want you to be mindful of, you know, how you're going to spend your time. Try to plan ahead so that it's not catching you off guard. Because, I think that when we are, especially if you're single and you're always asked, like, well, why are you single? You start to think something's wrong with you, right? It's like people struggle with being single on Valentine's Day, but maybe February 10th they were fine. And it's like, how is it that 4 days later I'm like struggling? Or how is it that around the holidays I struggle more than the other parts of the year with my singleness? It's because of the environment, the way society is structured to have people think this is what it's supposed to be. The same reason why January 1st people are motivated to change and to do these new resolutions is because it's on TV, everyone's talking about it, right? So it's about the environment. So just be mindful on like what is in your environment, whether it's the people you're talking to, what you're listening to, or what you're watching, and pay attention to how you're affected by it, so that you're being mindful of those voices in your head. Because there's little messages that we're getting on a regular basis that we're not even aware of. And we're allowing it to control our narrative with our life because we're not involved in the process of our thoughts. And so it's going to be important to do that.
Very, very much so. This world will I'm a firm believer. If you don't know who you are, this world will try to tell you who you are.
Absolutely. And if
And
you're choosing not to do it, you're choosing for the world to tell you.
yeah, yeah, it's realistically like you slide a blank piece of paper, it's like a contract, you with the world, and the world slid a blank piece of paper to you. You fill out your role. You fill out your position in this life. You fill out what you want to do, what you want to accomplish, what mark you want to leave on this world, like what your legacy will be or not be. Like there's a blank piece of paper that slid over to you. And so many of us sign the bottom and slide a blank piece of paper back to the world. And so you fill it out. You tell me what my life's going to be. You tell me what options I have. You tell me where I can live, how high or low my ceiling is, what opportunities will be presented to me. And that world, depending upon how it feels that day, you may get a good one, you may get a bad one. But if you put it in somebody else's hands, you can't then complain about the assignment that you were given. So when that blank piece of paper is slid over to you, shoot your hopes and your dream. Like New Year's resolutions, I always say, like, I wasn't born January 1st. So to me, New Year's is my birthday. So it's I start whatever I'm doing for my actual year that I move forward. I start then because that's the actual new year of my life. So I don't even worry about what the world is on. Like I'll use a calendar day for specific things, but when I look for my own personal things that I'm working on, I was like, all right, well, this is the new year for me. Everybody else will catch up in a month, but this is what I'm doing for me. Um, when you leave up your life and your whatever it is that you want to do to somebody else, then you just got to take what they give you. But if you want to say, this is the life I want to have, this is the energy I want to surround myself with, these are the people I want to be around, the environment I want to cultivate, then a lot of this stuff that we think will be the end of the world, a lot of these things will adjust around us. Like a lot of these people that we think are just so rigid and won't get it, a lot of them one way or another, because of what's going on in their lives, they're like, all right, well, she don't want to come, she don't want to come. All right. Like it's a lot of it is not as cataclysmic as we think it will be, when we want to do things for ourselves.
Yeah, it's true. And for people that may be like, yeah, but there's like the systemic racism in these systems, those are very much real.
Yeah.
There's no denying that. But also, I think that sometimes it means we might have to work a little bit harder than our counterparts, but don't stop working. Don't stop doing the work just because we know like these systems weren't always set up for us. Um, I think that's where people kind of like miss the mark when it comes to trying to work through some things, is because they recognize like it's a lot when you look at the bigger picture. But
Yeah.
definitely like start where you are with what you have, regardless of what the systems are looking like, because I don't think they're going to change in our lifetime.
Yeah.
But I'm not going to allow that to stop me from getting to where I'm trying to go.
Yeah. And so I have a certain perspective about that. And I don't, so I kind of look at it like if anybody's ever worked out, if you work out with somebody works out with a spotter, the two people lifting 100 pounds, and the person with a spotter has somebody who's taking 20% of the weight off of them. They got their hands under the bar and they're kind of helping them lift. And so they're doing 10 reps, but they're technically only lifting 80 pounds 10 times. And the other person doesn't have a spotter and they're lifting 110 times. It may feel like the person who's to your left is doing it easier. Well, yeah, because they've got somebody that's helping. There's something that's in place to take some of the weight off so they can lift. Yeah, but you're lifting more the same time. So a lot of these hurdles that are put into place actually makes you stronger than the person who had the benefit of a system that kind of coddled them. So when you get into that, so then when it's just, okay, now who can lift more? And you go head to head, that extra that you had without the spotter can sometimes make you stronger and a better.
Oh, you broke up. It can make you stronger in a better
And
way.
actually give you a better chance to succeed. So I look at a lot of these things like these systems in place that a lot of them can tie, tie your shoelaces together and put one hand behind your back. Yeah, but the funny thing about us as a people is that you may start off a couple of legs behind with your shoelaces tied together with one hand behind your back, but somehow when it comes down to the finish line, we right there. So now imagine if you can catch up with your shoelaces tied and your hand behind your back, what you're actually capable of. Some of us get hung up on the fact that our shoelaces were tied together. I focus on the fact that, yeah, they were, but we untied them, tied them right, got the other hand behind our back, and still got to the point to where we were competitive. We're still running, so the race isn't over, to the place that we're competitive in this meet. So I look at, okay, acknowledge those things that are going on, but these are not things in itself that mean you're guaranteed to lose. These are things that will develop and shape certain parts of you that do not get developed in others because they don't go through these same types of struggles and hurdles. And with those extra reps, those extra motions, those things that build you can put you in positions to where it's a two-sided thing, because number one, you develop skills that other people don't learn. And number two, most of the cases, you're underestimated when you show up. So you have somebody who's expecting you to do less than you're capable of, and you've done more reps than the person who's underestimating you. There's a lot of times I can say personally in life that I have caught up to people and passed them leaps and bounds because they thought I knew less than I did, or they expected me to not be who I was simply because of my name or when they saw my face. So for those people who are dealing with those things and worrying about all the systemic stuff that they feel like is out of their control, it's a system like a bill collector. You figure out the same way that collection took 30% of your debt, and you figure out how the system works, and then you figure out a way how I was paying $60 on a debt that I owe $200 for. There are ways that you can get through these systems that are set up to take advantage of you, and if you learn how they work, you can find ways that you can exploit those too.
Yeah, I agree. I hear you, and I think that when people, like, as far as the strength that's being built is huge. And yeah, like, if we can make it to the finish line, I just think in between the return isn't the same. And
No.
so, like, that's where I think people struggle with. And so just remembering, like, just because it wasn't meant for you, like Jermaine says, doesn't mean you can't do it, and doesn't mean you're not building. Like, I feel like I've build a lot over the years. I didn't get the same return as my counterparts, but I didn't stay focused on that. And so your point is, like, not to focus on that part, focus on what you're building for yourself,
Exactly.
regardless of what's happening. Yeah.
When you're
So
running
that's
your race,
important.
focusing on what your lane is.
Yeah.
If
And
you
it's
spend all your time pocket watching and watching the scoreboard and whatever happened in the other lane, that's where it can become very detrimental.
And I said this a while ago on this podcast. I said, if I had have known, I didn't know, like, systemic racism, so I was always focused on myself and my lane. Like,
No.
literally, what you're saying is how I've operated. So it was a different. I had a different mindset. The mindset you're talking to people about having is a mindset that's gotten me here, because there were so many things that, when I look back, I'm like, oh yeah, that wasn't meant for me, or I was supposed to fail there. But I was like, you know what? I'm just trying to do better than I did yesterday.
Yeah.
Or, okay, I can't get in this store. That's fine. That's cool. I wasn't thinking about systems. I was like, all right, I'm gonna come over here. And having that mindset is such a huge game changer, despite, like, what's happening outside of you, because every door is not gonna open, but every door is not going to be closed, and we can create our own lanes too.
It is.
So
And that, I think, with all the stuff we're talking about, when you're aware of who you are and you value who you are, you're not so concerned about who doesn't value you.
Nah, you're not.
And so, but when you have those holes and you have those empty spots, those empty pockets, then you're sitting there, then that's what you're focused on. Who's not receiving you, who's not accepting you, who's not. And those empty spaces get filled up with that doubt, with that insecurity, with the self-deprecating language and negative self-talk, all that sort of stuff. When you show up your boat and when you're okay, you're okay. Like that then, and that's kind of thing that I like to focus on, kind of tying in the whole reason, like when we're talking from the beginning about, like, with the self-awareness and with the assessment, the value that I got out of it. It helped me be okay. Like, when I know what I am, what I'm not, how I operate, how I don't operate, the best environments for me, the environments I probably need to stay away from. Like, the boat is shored up. So if you're like, we don't want you here. Okay. I'm good in an environment while I'm received, and I'm good in one that I'm not.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, and the whole, what do they think of me? When you're good, you don't even think about what somebody thinks of you, because it ain't got nothing to do with me. Like, your opinion has nothing, is not my department. Your view of me is above my pay grade. So it's like that is not a department I have any control over. So you can, if it's good, kind words, I appreciate them. But if they're not, all right, well, I appreciate your point of view. Either way, that I keep it pushing. Hit them with the 2 words, I'm gone, and just keep it moving. But so when we focus on ourselves and know who we are, and when we have those areas that we're not so good at, then that's where we work on ourselves. It's not an outside job. And so it's like, I have some issues with self confidence. I have some issues hearing criticism. I have some issues with abandonment. I have some issues worrying about being a people pleaser. I have issues where I'm worried about upsetting someone because maybe I have traumatic responses to raised voices or even profanity. Like I have a fear response to maybe making somebody upset. These are all in house issues. And so these are some things that I need to shore up. These are cars that are in my blind spots that I need to address. It's not the car in your blind spot. They're not the problem. They're not even doing anything wrong. They're just driving. It's just where they're positioned at, and your vantage point is problematic to you. So it's like, let me figure out what these cars are. Let me figure out how to widen my side mirrors. Let me figure out how to see the road more clearly. And then I don't care about that Camry on my passenger side. I'm not concerned who's driving the Corolla. I know my lane. I know my car. I know my vantage points and my perspective, and I'm going to drive what's best for me.
That's good. I like it. I really hope for people listening that, I mean, there was so much that we said today. I really hope that you are able to take some good nuggets from here, and just kind of know that as you are trying to implement some of the strategies, that it takes discipline. It takes being intentional, the same way you will set your alarm for work, thinking about what kind of intentions are you creating for the change you're trying to do in your own life. Especially, we're over 18, nobody's going to do it for us. So it's nobody's coming to save you. So I really hope that this was something that you have found value in. So thank you, Jermaine, for doing this for us.
I always, I tell you all the time, my favorite person in mental health.
Thanks.
I always love the opportunity to do this with you.
Thank you. Can you let people know how they can reach you?
If you have any questions or interest in taking the assessment or possible the coaching program, you can email me at teameffortprogram@gmail.com. That's TEAMEFFORTPROGRAM, teameffortprogram@gmail.com. And then just to find me for anything else going on, every social media platform is at J Morris CEO.
Yeah, and all the self-awareness stuff that we talked about today and the importance of knowing it. The disc assessment that he does in the coaching program is a great start to that process. So thank you so much. I appreciate you.
Thank you. I appreciate you as well. Always